Welcome back to week 3 of Double X Download, episode 3 of the 2023-24 off season. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at track prep. This is going to be a series. We're going to put together a series over the course of the winter behind racetrack operation, the business of motorsports, stuff like that. This week's video, as always, powered by AG Video and sponsored by Brad Weaver Racing, Champion Cartway, and Iron Ring Studios. Trying to do this off the top of my head. I did make a list if I had to look at it. But yeah, we're back. This is going to be a track prep deal. We're going to talk about, mainly how to screw it up, because it's way easier to screw it up than it is to get it right. But my co-host over here, Brad Weaver, as always.
How's it going, everybody? Nice to be on board. And as Brandon said, it's definitely one of those things that's hit or miss with track prep. And you're always, especially, for us, we don't have an indoor location 99.9% of the time. So fighting the weather is always one of those tricky things that you have to deal with podcast or with podcasting as well. But track prep. It's not a controlled environment all the time, so there's lots of different variables that you have to overcome throughout the week in order to prepare a good surface that puts on 2-3 wide racing and something that the fans will enjoy. So getting into that, let's talk about some of your experiences track prepping, and then we'll talk a little bit about my experiences track prepping.
Yeah, so basically how my race week starts, typically I try to get over the track Monday or Tuesday, see what kind of shape it's in from the race before. Sometimes we get lucky, the track was super smooth, and we don't really want to touch it too much other than adding moisture. Kart track and stock car track prep is very different, but very the same at the same time. With karts, you don't have high horsepower, heavy machines, typically tearing huge holes in the surface, but at the same time, it's also got to be a lot smoother than a stock car track too. So a lot of most 99% of my experience is going to come from the kart side of it, but a lot of it's going to translate over to the stock car stuff. But basically, there's no two tracks like the same, preparation, and it's any little difference and any little change in the track surface can really can throw you a curveball. Even with everything else being the same, change one little bit of the track composition, the material surface composition, and it definitely can make things a lot more difficult, a lot more of a challenge. And I have with two different tracks, I have two very, very different surfaces. And I always have. Action Park, the surface there is garbage right now, and the material is. It's just not. It's not going to be conducive to, as it sits. It's not going to be conducive to any sort of racing.
Can I interlude here real quick? So just tell some of the viewers a little bit about what kind of surface is typically ideal for, in your experience, kart racing. What typical type of clay, dirt, sand, soil material is the more ideal for you, or what are you looking for, say, before you even try to put any other material down? Just scrape down and carve out a racetrack. What are you looking for?
So basically, with the kart tracks, obviously clay content is the big thing. It doesn't matter blue clay, brown clay, red clay. As long as it's got decent clay content, we can work with it with the kart tracks. Now, stock cars can be a lot more. It's basically, obviously clay content is key, but with the karts we can actually we can make it work with a little bit lower clay content. Basically, we need really, really fine particle size, matter size. Like when we started out at Action Park, there wasn't a lot of clay there. There was decent. I'm not gonna say there wasn't a lot. It was decent clay content, but it was actually more of a loamy which is more of a coarse granule surface material. But being karts and being, at that time it was all slick tire classes, as long as you get the moisture in it, get it packed right, it would hold together, stay smooth, stay tacky. You can look at pictures on the Action Park East page from opening night 2021. We took over. There was a ton of moisture in the track, and it was super, super tacky, and it worked out really well that way. Ideally, the only problem, the coarser the granule, the makeup of the the surface, the more moisture it's going to take, and the faster it's going to dry out. Which, when you're, obviously everything is about just getting the moisture content just right for any track surface. So basically you got to factor that in. The different types of clay are basically hold the moisture differently than others. Like Champion, over to Champion, we've got blue clay. We dug that out of the ground, and it was like just sky blue. It was, you look at the sky, and we're digging it that day, and it was like, I'm telling you, it matched the color of the sky that day. It was really, really good looking stuff. But blue clay is basically it's bluestone that hasn't been fired yet. It's what it is. It's super, super, super fine stone matter. Where like a brown clay typically has more organic matter in it. It's not so much a stone, stone like an ultrafine stone dust, as much as it is organic material broken down over years, over millions of years to create it.
So I've quarried myself a lot of bluestone. It's a sedimentary rock. It's formed by compression and layers and layers and layers, and that's why you get like those reeds in it. Yep. You can see them reeds, and they split nice and everything. So over millions of years, this blue clay gets compacted, and that's what forms your bluestone. And it's funny that you mentioned the bluestone, because this is where my track prep comes into play. Is I've prepped and built a number of RC car tracks over the years, and one of the things I used to use was the saw mud from cutting the bluestone. Yep. It obviously makes dust when you cut it, and they mix it with water, and it gets put into a large sludge pond, basically. And then where it collects, and it kind of forms back into a clay type substance. It's not bound as good, I'm assuming, because there's not other organic material to help bind it as good. But once it settles and it smooths, boy, does it stay smooth, and it stays together. Also very abrasive on tires as well.
When we first built Champion, there was basically one line of bluestone. It was bluestone sludge, bluestone muck, that had been used for material, and they were going to put more of it down, but I'm not going to get into why it didn't go down. But it actually, the very first night we were in a Champion, we didn't have, that was all that was on the track, and the original material that the track was built on, which is really super, super sandy. So we wanted to get the track open. We're like, we're going to go for it. We knew we had clay coming the next week. There's some better material coming the next week. And we couldn't get any more of the quarry stuff. But what was really unique about that is that it's more of a coarse particle stuff, but there's enough of the super fine particles in it where it would hold together. And one thing I noticed is that the night we ran on it, like, it was drying out really fast. We're like, okay, it's going to be dusty. But then the sun went down. And when the sun went down, you could see it start to sparkle. You could actually see the moisture. It blew my mind how it happened. But we'd been watering the track all day trying to get it ready, so there was moisture down in it. But as soon as that sun went down, it all drew to the top, and it went from the white. You know what it looks like when it's white. It's bone dry, just dusty, and then it came up and it got fast, and it's abrasive, so it started turning black.
Yeah.
It was taking rubber and getting faster as the night went on. It would have been really interesting to see if we could have gotten about 20 more truckloads of it and made an entire track surface out of it, how it would have worked out long term. But neither here nor there. We ended up getting other clay material from one of the local trucking companies had it. It's actually the same stuff as on 5 Mile Point. It's a clay topsoil and mulched compost. They call it compost. Basically, there's a lot of wood chips and stuff like that in it, and the potential was there for that to be a good, make a good surface with more. We ended up putting like 10 loads down, which really only worked out to about an inch of surface all the way around the track, and it was decent, but it wasn't thick. But it wasn't thick enough to, and it was expensive. I mean, it was expensive. It was $550 a load that we were getting delivered. And we were talking, we're going to need another 20 loads. Like, there's not that much money in go-kart racing, for that kind of expense. And then we found clay right on site. It's the only reason we buried it, because we did have one night where we got a lot of rain, and we had a rain delay. It was the week before we put that down, but that got everything so it bound together good. It smoothed out nice when we ran it in. So we had a good surface, we had a really beautiful surface that night. But like I said, it would have needed about at least 3 or 4 more inches of it, and at 10 loads an inch, it would have taken a lot to get it where it needed to be, to make a good surface long term. But
so just kind of recapping a little bit, ideal surface is something that's got a little bit of clay content. It can be a little bit loamy. We're just not looking for too much sand or anything like that.
Right.
You got to consider your classes that you're running.
Yep.
And what kind of abrasion or damage that they're going to do to the track.
Yep.
And then you've also got your weather, your weekly weather.
Yeah.
What happens throughout the week. So tell us a little bit about, again, we're banking on your experience. Tell us a little bit about kind of what some of the weekly struggles are if you've got a lot of rain, what some of the weekly struggles are if you've got little to no rain.
Well, luckily for me.
And talk us through a little bit about what happens throughout the week when you're dealing with an extreme from one side to the other.
So you talk about from 2022 to 2023. 2022 we had no rain at all summer long. In fact, our ponds dried up. It was a disaster year. But basically, the big thing is, like, if you haven't had a lot of rain, you really got to get on the track early in the week and just soak it. Usually, you got to do it as the sun's going down at the earliest, because summertime, it's hot. You put it down, a little bit of it might soak in. Most of it's going to evaporate. Basically, you've got to flood the track to get anything down in, and then you get up and, I mean, most of us work. We don't run go-kart tracks for a living. So you've got to...
Or big car tracks for that matter.
Yeah, or big car tracks.
Most of the promoters around here all still have jobs.
Most of them do. Usually I'm trying to get on it. Like, I look at the forecast for the week to see what it is, but I try to get moisture on it usually Tuesday night or so, Wednesday, depending on what the weather is. And then the night before the race, like talking champion, Friday night Friday night we're racing, so Thursday night I'm usually over there, soak it once before the sun goes down. Then on race day, I get to the track about 10:30 in the morning. Trophy place opens at 10. As soon as I stop and grab the trophies on the way to the track, so I don't feel like running back or sending somebody else after it or whatever. So I get to the track about 10:30, start flooding it then. And one of the things that sucks, the biggest pain in the ass about the go-kart tracks, is they have to stay so smooth. You can't really, once you start watering, you really can't put tires on the track, because when you start packing it, particularly right after you water it, and you still got that, it doesn't matter how much water you put down, you're always going to have that dry layer in between. So if you put the water down, like we use a wagon usually for the first load. Maybe if we can stretch out between loads, we might go, or if there's a lot of moisture in the track, so it's saturated down through there, we can usually put tires on it a little bit more. But like we've got the wagon, we just dump the first load with the wagon, gives a nice even coat, and then we've got a couple fire hoses in the infield that pump out of a pond, and usually any subsequent coats of water we'll water with the hoses after that. Just to keep the tires off, because what happens is if we go out there, like we have to line up where we start watering, so we don't run over anywhere we just water, because it'll create ruts. it'll peel. Actually, the clay, especially if you've done any work trying to even the surface out, like basically the easiest way to flatten the surface, you got to kind of chew it up, spread it out, and then pack it. But you're always going to have that loose material on top. When you put water on top of that material and you drive on it, it sticks to your tires. So now you end up with dry tire tracks that are an inch deep, and an inch deep ruts in a go-kart tracker, they're not good for business. It tends to piss guys off.
So what, basically on a dry week, something that you've got no rain, no help from Mother Nature, the problem that you run into is a separation between the layer that's wet and where it's still dry. Once you try to roll on it, it separates at that point. Yeah,
that tends to be that in between. You've got moisture down deep, then you've got your. See, it doesn't take much. I mean, you might only be talking 2 inches that's dried out. But when you start putting water on it, it takes several coats of water to get that moisture, to get the moist layer down in so it reaches the other moist layer and kind of binds together. But then, because it's soft, because it's not compacted, then when you go to pack it, it tends to for a stock car track, it's packable. You put big tires on it. You put a big packer truck with big monster truck tires on it. You go out there. It's not a big deal because a couple inch deep from the tread. No big deal for a stock car. They don't even feel it. They don't see it. It looks beautiful. For a go-kart, that doesn't work. So generally, when we water a go-kart track, we put the first load down with the wagon. Don't drive over your tire tracks. Basically, we start it up so it's spraying going into turn 3. Run 1 lap and we pull off the track, pull off the track exit. The spray will hit where we started without driving over it, and then from there out, we water it with the hoses. Generally, we don't, the first few loads, we give it like 10 minutes to soak in, and it'll suck it up real quick. It's like pouring it on a sponge, and it's just all day. Just keep water on, but you're trying to match it so you don't have to do a roll-in, because in kart racing, we've had the tire debate a lot, but guys are washing their tires. They absolutely don't want to get their karts muddy. They want to avoid because they want to work on their kart, not work on cleaning their kart. It's just like the big cars.
I can definitely attest to the, I've ran a lot of mud laps in my racing career, and it's definitely not one of our favorite things to do as racers is run around the track and get the car completely covered in mud or the go-kart covered in mud.
Okay,
we don't necessarily have the tire prep, chemical prep, aspect of it going in. But as well, we all grind our race car tires, we try to keep them clean as much as possible. That's why we pressure wash them during the week and, do everything that we can to minimize the amount of contact that our tires have with the dirt. So, obviously, running mud laps or packing the track as a racer with our race cars isn't ideal for us,
right? And that's
as drivers.
Yeah, and that's basically what it comes down to. I can put down almost a perfect surface every week, but guys got to be willing to run mud laps because that's big, and it's so but that's not realistic. It's not fair to the drivers to have to do it. To have to do it every week. I mean, I know a lot of the budget guys don't care. They're like, whatever, get a little muddy, but it's going to make for a badass surface. Then yeah, absolutely. But it's not. Those drivers are few and far between, and even they would get sick of it every week if they had to go out there every week when we started off. So basically, what I've got to do is I've got to time that last load of water so it's going to be soaked in and just about ready when hot laps start. You might have to do a couple laps in hot laps if there's a puddle or 2 left. But so you've got to time it just right, and I mean, and the timing of that last load comes down to how warm it is out, and 5 degrees makes all the difference in the world. The humidity in the air makes all the difference in the world. If it's a hot, humid day, it's like an hour this should dry up, and it's like, well, we got enough moisture in the track now. Or okay, well, it's not gonna dry up. So now you're out. You got somebody out there dragging a tire with a truck, and you're gonna make it rough for tracks.
Or doing mud laps. Or
doing mud laps. And I mean, slick tires. Honestly, for a go-kart track, a light vehicle with wide, slick tires is ideal for working the track in and kind of kneading it together and and it makes for every time we've had to do it. Like anytime we've had a rain delay, and we've had to put carts on the track to roll it in, we always end up with a badass track afterwards. But and that's just that just goes to show what putting a lot of moisture and then rolling in the track will do for you.
So we've talked about the not so great weeks as far as Mother Nature helping us out. You just had started to get into it. I wanted to talk more now about some of the more wetter weeks and what kind of racetracks that they provide.
Yeah, we've had those weeks we have a lot of rain. Obviously there's a fine line too. It's too much rain, and then you end up with the pits are a mess, the track surface. Generally, once you get into the summer season, you don't have that deep down muck like you do in the spring. Wet spring can make it difficult to bring the track around. Generally, summertime, it can pour all day on race day. If it stops an hour before race time, as long as the drainage is good and the water stays out of the pits. We had to cancel once or twice this year because track was fine, but the pits were flooded. But that's always nice. The weeks we don't have to put any water down. We had a couple weeks this year where it rained all week long. There's a lot of moisture in the track, and get just a few showers on race day. And it ends up where we're out there on the track with push brooms and squeegees and stuff like that. An hour before hot laps starting, trying to get the puddles dried up and out there. And generally, you do have to do a roll in on those nights, but that definitely watering the track gets to be ideal. The ideal way to put water down is basically a steady fine mist. Like a sprinkler system, because you can drench it, let it sit, drench it, let it sit, drench it, let it sit. It's not going to do the same as just a light, steady, rain. We did try to build a sprinkler system last year at Champion, or 2 years ago at Champion. I spent like $1,500 and didn't work out. I think I could have with some more investing. I think I could have made it work really well. But basically, the pipe that goes underneath the track was too small to flow enough water to operate the number of sprinkler heads that we needed to make it work. But I think if we can get that fine mist, basically get a bunch of sprinklers out there, so they're just setting down a fine mist all day, I think I can make a really nice track much more consistently than it is right now.
I definitely have to say that some of the best nights that I've had racing at your track, racing at the big tracks, some of the most fun nights that I've had have definitely been those rainy, wet all week type of racetracks where the track's really heavy. Sometimes it might build up a cushion. Those, even at Pencan last year, we had a few of those nights where, we were on rain delay. We had such a wet summer this year. And Keith was darned and determined to get the show off at Pencan, and he said, we're racing. And I waited around. He'd grade the track. He'd pack it back in, and we'd go out there, we'd do mud laps, whatever it took. And finally, we got out on the racetrack. It was time to race, and that was one of the raciest, nights that we had, or multiple. Yeah. It's the best. Some of the best surfaces that we've had, or tackiest, bitiest. It's one of them deals where everybody's fast that night. I think that's the ultimate goal or whatever is from a racer. That's the type of track that you want to race on every single week.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's it's a difficult thing to achieve, as a promoter or a track prep guy.
It's an expensive one because those are the nights guys don't show up.
Well, you don't necessarily have the following, I guess, because of you got your fair weather guys or somebody that's, well, it's probably going to rain, so I'm not going to go. But, for everybody that's pretty much committed to going or racing, those are probably some of the best races that we've had or whatever. Like the most fun we've had out on a racetrack, I think, is when it's heavy like that. But like you're saying, it's expensive to do it because, it's also it's expensive because you got to put so much water down, but it's also hard to replicate too.
Oh yeah.
Because like you said, just flooding the track once and letting it sit and then flooding it again, because obviously we can't seem to figure out as track prep people how to just make it consistently rain for an hour or 45 minutes before.
Sprinkler system's a way to do it. If you can afford to put a sprinkler system together that'll do it, then that's the way to do it. And that could be, like, I have no doubt that it could be done. The only limitation is the wallet. It's expensive because you got to have a lot of water flow. You got to have a big pump, a lot bigger than I anticipated. You got to have a lot of sprinkler heads, and you've got to make as fine a mist as possible. So you got to have, you just got to figure out how to do it and how to have enough water flow. I know at one time, I think it was when I was working at Thunder Mountain. I know Dick Stark had talked about trying to build a sprinkler system up there, and he talked to I believe it was Randy Marsh, he's a water guy, he's a well guy and stuff like that, and he priced out it was going to be something like 30 or 40 grand to do something like that for a big car track. And I'm sure some tracks could swing that without much problem, but most on a local level that's a huge coin. Obviously, it wouldn't take that much at. I think it could probably be done for about $8 grand at a go-kart track, but still $8 grand is that's several years worth of profit. So it's just not unless you could wrangle everything up, used parts and stuff like that, and make something happen, then save a bunch of coin that way. But that's the most ideal way to replicate rain. Is with a sprinkler system, because it's that steady. It's not getting hit with water for 3 seconds, heavy water for 3 seconds and let it run off and whatnot.
Well, you also have the added benefit of not having to be on the track. You can put moisture into your surface without actually having to have any tires on your track whatsoever.
Dragging hoses and
you don't have to drag hoses. You don't have to walk across it. You don't have to drive a water wagon. You don't have to drive a big water truck. You don't have to drive packer trucks to pack it back in and try to displace some of that moisture.
Right.
So we're coming up on halfway here in the show, and I think we're gonna get to something that most people want to hear about, our big catch here.
The water makes dust.
Water makes dust.
So that's one thing I see. You get on a lot of these websites, and I think it's Jeremy Corcoran who's known to say water makes dust, and he gets a lot of crap for it from people who don't know what they're talking about. Basically, most promoters know. That obviously you're not going to take a bone dry track, put water on it, and make it dustier. It's not like that. But when we're gonna go with. We've had nights like this. There's a couple nights I can really think of where it was dusty and we decided not to water for a couple of reasons. Generally, when you've got moisture in the track, you've got some, but it's kind of burning off on top. Quite often you get racing, and that'll burn. It'll get dusty for a little bit, and you'll notice it. There's one local quarter-mile track that is.
That's all right. Well, you just tell your story, and I can.
Yeah, we'll go.
I'll take the sword for that one.
Yeah. So basically, the water makes dust thing. So basically, what happens as that race goes on is that dry layer will burn off. That dry as the tires get sliding on it, as they get packing in, it gets to packing that material in, and eventually you're just going to keep sweeping and sweeping and sweeping. And you're going to work that loose material off, and you're going to pack the rest of it in. So what happens is
at that point you might lay some rubber down.
Yeah, you might lay some rubber.
Start to.
Right. The track's taking rubber. The groove is widening out.
You're starting to seal that surface over.
Right, bingo. Seal. You're sealing in all that material. You're sealing the moisture, even if it's a little bit dusty. But you'll notice as a lot of these tracks, as they widen out, it might still be dusty, but you'll notice as the racing's going, as the heat races are going on, that dust is dying down some. Well, then
you can actually. You see exactly what you're saying. I'm going to kind of reiterate with, it's that first 5 laps in the heat race or whatever when the track is or even in feature time, say like Oswego.
Yep.
A couple years back at Oswego for Dirt Week, it was just so incredibly dusty you could hardly even see the cars.
Yep.
40, 50 laps in, that dust is going away. Now you can start seeing the cars. You can see the cars on the racetrack. You can tell that the drivers definitely have a lot better visibility. But say the first 20 laps, I think it was 2 years ago at Oswego, maybe 3. The first 20 laps of the race, you couldn't see anything from the stands. And I was watching some in-car videos from guys that had posted their GoPro races or whatever their videos from that race, and literally you're driving through a cloud of dust and your spotter's literally telling you where to go. You can't see any cars in that video. Right. You can't hardly even see the front bumper of the car that you're riding with. So I think that's kind of the picture that when the fans go and see what happened, that what you're describing is exactly what they're seeing.
Yeah. So that track, as you get going on, that works its way off, and you'll see it. Like I said, you see it at a lot of tracks, a lot of Southern Tier tracks. You see it, and it works its way out, and the track generally widens out. Guys start running higher up on the track, and it's as they run higher up, they're kicking up more and more dust. And then we've all seen where we get to intermission, and it was fairly dusty in the heat races, and then you see the water truck go out on the track. And the problem with the water truck going on the track, on a level when you're talking, we're going back to grains, like grains of soil, grains of materials, the particles. If you take your garden hose and you go outside and you spray the dirt, whether it's got moisture in it, whether it's dry, whatever. You spray that, and that water sits there before it soaks in. You look at it, and you'll see dust sitting on top of that dirt. Basically, what's happening is you use a garden hose to wash, right? You wash your vehicle, you hit it with that, it loosens up the dirt. So now you're spraying it down, you're loosening up all that tightened-in material. All that stuff has been burned in, the rubber that may have been laid down, you're loosening all that back up. So now what happens is you get that basically separates, and as the water soaks in, it kind of sits back down. It just sits on the surface. Well, now you've taken that surface that was all the loose stuff, which is the dust, the stuff that's not packed tight, the stuff that's just sitting there loose, that it had all been blown off before. Well, now you've created new by adding that water to the surface. You just kind of create that little bit of separation. You're loosening up the material now. Now that stuff's going to dry out. So now when the green flag comes out, you're watching guys quite often are jumping back to the bottom of the track because now there's no high side because it's all marbles out there. And now you're starting over. So you've run all these laps in the heat race, and you burn off most of it. If they just left it alone, probably by feature time, by the end of that first feature, the dust would have been as minimal as it could possibly get. I mean, there's obviously when you're lacking, if you're in a dust situation like that, sometimes the promoter made a mistake. Been there, done that. You just didn't get the moisture where it needed to be. But when you add it, you're just creating more of a problem. Now, that brings me to one of the other nights that the worst night we had at Champion, that we opted, and it was really, really dusty. I actually got upside down. I tore my eyes, the lens on my eye. I ended up getting upside down, scooping up a bunch of dirt and putting it in my face. It was a miserable night. But what had happened that day was I had bought some bleachers. I had a guy that was donating he was sponsoring his time to go up and pick them up, and he gets a hold of me on race day morning, says, "Hey, we can go get them today." I'm like, I gotta get water in the track. Called up a friend of mine who lived down the road. It's like, hey, I need you to get down there and water the track. And he's like, he'd worked overnight. He goes, I'm going to take a quick nap. He goes, I'll get down there early this afternoon. I'll start putting water down. It wasn't ideal. I knew it wasn't ideal. Probably shouldn't have done it. But when a guy's donating his time to go pick up some stuff, go get the bleachers for the track, we're bringing them right back to the track. And we got back at 3 p.m, and a friend of mine had overslept a little bit and was just woken up. Track had not had any water on it yet today. Said he was on his way. Long story short, the track didn't see any water till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a hot, sunny day. And we'd had to rework the track. Track was rough, so I had to chew it up, repack it. So now I've got that, that inch of just loose dirt that really need to be packed in, but needs to get a lot of moisture in it to get it down through, to get it to bind to the surface. We knew it wasn't going to happen. We put as much water as we could get on it in an hour. And as soon as we put carts on the track, that sticky layer stuck to the tires, chunked it up, and there was moisture down. You go down a little bit farther, there was moisture down. We went out there, and it was a dust bowl, but it was blowing off. It was working its way off, but the problem was we knew if we put more water down, that it was just going to do the same thing again. Basically, it's going to stick to the tires again, chunk off again, and the track's getting rough at the same time because now you're digging holes because you've got this, you're peeling out, you're chunking out an inch or two at a time. So it was a disaster night, but it was it was another situation where water would not have helped, short of absolutely flooding the track and packing it and reworking it, which maybe in hindsight we could have done, but putting it's like, it's dusty, throw some water down. It doesn't work like that all the time.
So essentially, the whole idea of water makes dust. Water will make dust, or well, it won't enhance your racing surface if you haven't gotten the moisture down into the ground and at least 5-6 inches, say, down into the ground. I don't know what that number is for like a go-kart track or versus a big track, but there's a certain number there, a number of inches that you've got to get that moisture down. And we'll go back to touch on 5 Mile Point. 5 Mile Point was one of those tracks that I always felt, and I'm not saying that one guy's way was better than another guy's way, and I just have spent a lot of time there racing and just got to understand what we had to work with as a surface. And I always felt like watering the surface after the heat races, and he would do a few of the support class features. It would take quite a bit of time. It would take that whole from hot laps to the end of those support class features for us to get a groove worked into the surface, and it would start to widen out. And before that, it would just be like this really sandy, silty, powdery type of surface that you really had a hard time getting a hold of until, like I said, the groove got pushed out. That sandy, silty, thick, heavier dust would get pushed out, and the track would start to blacken up a little bit, and it would widen out, and then you could move around a little bit. It wasn't so locked down one lane around the Uke tires, and like I said, it would take so long for this to groove out and to get to be like a 2-wide racing deal, and at that point, the promoter would water the racetrack and then send like the sportsman or the modifieds out. He'd water right before. Well, what he did, again, you could talk to as many people as you want about that, but in my eyes, what happened was once that groove was pushed out and widened out, you'd water again and you'd wash away whatever groove was there. Like you're saying, it would loosen up that surface, the surface layer, whatever, half an inch or less that water would seep down in, it would loosen it up from what was actually packed.
Right.
And then that groove that was widened out is no longer there. Now you're running, like you said, everybody's moved down to the bottom. You're running single file and you're peeling up that surface layer that just like, again, we're talking about, peeling up the track when you go out and water it.
Yeah.
You know, and you roll on it. It's peeling that top surface layer. Yeah, it's still really packed because we've been racing on it all night. But there's still that fine, minuscule layer, you know, that's peeling up and it's dusting off. It's getting thrown out into the middle groove.
Yeah.
Say where the middle groove would be. And there's not really anything there. And we have to re-groove and you know, we have to put a bunch of laps in again to get the track widened out to where you can move around. As a racer, I think the best racing that you're ever going to see is when guys can move around on the racetrack.
Yep, and as much as guys don't want to say it, dry slick racing. You got guys, you watch the Super Dudes. I know a lot of guys that, you know, a lot of fans like to complain about. Oh, it's dry slick. Everybody's going dry slick, and I mean, okay, the cars are a little slower, but you know what? They're running everywhere from the hub to the top. You know, they're running from the top to the bottom, everywhere in between. I mean, you know, we see it at Champion. We know when we hit the moisture just right and we put the right tires on the track, namely the treads. When we put the treaded tires on the track, it polishes off. Now, people see black, you know, see a black and shiny track, and they always assume black shiny it's not always the same. Black shiny, there's taking rubber black and shiny, which the track actually it's faster when you're taking rubber because obviously you got rubber on rubber contact. You know, so you're going to have a lot of bite there, or you got the polished off shiny, which is generally what we see, which actually slicks the track off. So we end up, you see guys are backpedaling, basically like racing on ice, but you've got guys running from the top to the bottom, which does make for some pretty good racing. But again, that's another moisture thing and putting the right tires on the track at the right time to prep the track to be like that. But, you know, and everybody, there was like, oh, put calcium on it. Calcium's magic. And calcium does help. But here's the thing about calcium. The EPA does not like you for doing it.
I'll tell you, the race car chassis and any moving parts
do not like calcium.
They do not like calcium.
No, calcium is extremely corrosive. I mean, calcium's not it can help. Yeah, I'm not going to say it can't help as far as the track surface, because it can. The other issues with calcium is it's expensive. When you're going to put down enough calcium to make a difference on a track, you're going to spend some coin. You're talking $25 a bag or something like that. It doesn't take long at all to spend several $100s and to do that. But the other thing is, it doesn't solve the moisture being down deep issue. That's what the generally surface issues is, getting that even moisture content through. It'll put moisture on top. So yeah, a little bit of, you know, sometimes you get the surface drying out. It'll slow down the drying time, you know, for the top layer. But that calcium is not like it's going to work its way all the way down,
seeping down into the track.
Right, and I mean, we've tried. I'm not going to say we've tried, but I know a track, that a 10th mile go-kart track with a terrible surface, that may have put down 600 gallons of liquid calcium in an attempt to try to get moisture down into it after a shit show of a race back in June-ish, and it didn't. It doesn't solve the world's problems. It's if the surface content isn't what you need it to be. Totally unrelated, Action Park had a terrible, the worst. It was the worst track, worst prepared surface. I'm not gonna say worst prepared, but the worst surface of any race I've ever run in my life. Basically, what it came down to was they had added more of the bluestone dust, not the good, not the the muck. But it's basically cat litter they added for the speedway bikes.
It wasn't really stone dust. It was more like chips.
Yeah, basically, it was picture cat litter.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody in this area or is watching that's ever done any kind of stone work, but it almost like when you thermal stone, it'll take and chip basically the surface, and it'll come off in like tiny little cornflake sized chips, and that's pretty much what you were talking about. It was a little bit smaller.
It was a lot finer than that, but
cocoa pebble sized chips.
I'm going with cat litter, but and it had been added in the past to the track.
It was pretty chippy, man.
I'm not saying it wasn't chip, but there'd been that stuff had been added to the track in the past. It was always dumped on top of the track, and much to the displeasure of the landlord, I would, anytime we had a cart race, I'd put the back blade down, peel it up to the top or down to the bottom. And I mean, it would work its way into the surface, so it, continually over the last couple of years got worse and worse. But it was still tolerable. The track generally would still hold together, short of weather throwing it. We had a couple of nights where the track was really rough because there's not a lot of banking to it. You get puddles that just sit there on the track and they just turn to muck because that's again, it would start out really loamy and now it's got this basically sand in it. So that makes it, it doesn't stay hard. You get water in it, you get a puddle, and it just turns into a big mucky sponge. And so we had some holes open up a couple of years ago, like the 212. We had some gnarly holes. Same spots we had this year, but then, they added more of that stuff for their Memorial Day race, and instead of putting it on top, they added more to it, and then they tilled it.
So it got down into the surface.
So you're talking pushed it down 4, 5, 6 inches into the surface, and now instead of having a good solid base that was at least hard and held together, you've got that much powder, and it's got all this stone shit mixed into it. And you've
got no binding agent.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just done, a week or two before this race. And then we paid $1,000 to win. We had a ton of carts, and the track was really slippery. It was a dust bowl. That was another night where adding water to the track wasn't really gonna accomplish anything short of flooding it, reworking it. But we have curfews. We can't just take 2 hours in the middle of the race program to take, and basically we would have had to disc it up, soak it, pack it, and hope it came out smooth enough to be able to race on. And even at that point, it's still not going to be a great surface. It's still, because it's so sandy. We were our hands were tied on that deal. So where if we had clay, if we could put more organic matter into it, then it would have helped. If we can get clay, and like I said, I have no interest in running any races on that surface ever again. We do have to run one race next year. Regardless of what happens with the surface, because we had a rain out last year. Everybody's got the rain checks. They paid to race. They're going to get their race. We may have to deal with what we've got for now if clay doesn't get put down until before that point. But I'm not going to schedule any new races to run on the old stuff. Just can't, because you can't. Your hands are tied, and it takes the perfect storm to be able to have an even decent surface on it. But yeah.
So we've covered our ideal situations, what we want to see throughout the week, what we'd like to see at the end of the week come Friday, Saturday, whatever race day is, some of the processes that we've done, and some of the things that we've tried that didn't work, and some of the things that we've tried that did work, or we got pretty much a good science down to it. But closing out the show, I want to talk about some of the funnier things in track prep, and maybe not funny, but some of those, like, oh wow, I didn't know that, or type of things. Like you have a lot of track prep in go-karts. I've got a number of years over my growing up and growing old and having fun as a young kid, and even some into my adult life, is I've prepped a lot of RC tracks, and again, like go-kart tracks, our RC tracks are, they need to be smooth, and one of the things that's a little bit difficult with the RC car tracks is it's a lot harder to get traction with an RC car, and it is, I'd say, bigger. I think the bigger scale you go with whatever vehicle you're trying to race is definitely a little bit easier to get traction onto. But talk about some of the funnier things that we've done that worked instead of calcium. I know everybody hates calcium, like, for the most part. Grape soda. We used, when we raced RC cars and we needed traction, boy, we used a lot of grape soda on the racetrack.
There's a show that I like to watch. They haven't put any out. It's on it's on Peacock. Dale Jr. downloads Lost Speedways, and Dale Jr. had a go-kart track on his property. He got a bunch of old rental cars from some place that shut down, I think he said, and he was sponsored by Budweiser. And on race night, they would water the track with Budweiser because he had cases and cases and cases. Everybody would grab cans and just dump it on the track. And he said it actually worked really well. It's like, you know what? I bet it does. Now, if I could find a beer sponsor that doesn't mind us dumping several hundred gallons of beer on the track, maybe we'd be onto something. But yeah, I had some stuff that I tried. I made some stuff. This was quite a few years ago. That I'd loaned to, or I'd loaned. It's. I don't want to say what all was in it, because I might still be experimenting with something. But I made some stuff that Larry Champion had used at his RC track. That he loved it. We made this dust control agent.
Well, go ahead. I'll let you tell your story, and then I want to tell you a little story about racing at Larry's.
Well, go ahead. Well, regardless, I made the stuff for him. I sent him. I think we sent him like 20, 25 gallons of this stuff, and he put it down on the track, and he said it loved it. It was fast. It was full of bite. It stayed moist. He didn't have to put much water down at all the rest of the summer, because it held the moisture to that long. That year, he said a lot less watering after putting it down. I'd really like to. I got to find sources for the main ingredient. But
I think that maybe if we reach out to Mike Springstead, we might be able to.
Mike, if you're watching this, do not tell what that secret ingredient is.
We might
Mike knows it, because
we might be able to get the recipe if we reach out to Mr. Mike Springstead.
If he's on here, Mike, don't you tell. I think it was on last week.
So one of the things about racing Larry's, and I don't know, I think when you had given him that stuff or whatever was probably the year before I had made it over to check Larry's little backyard track out. And let me tell you, not knocking it whatsoever, because it was the most fun place to race or play, mess around. It was just maybe about 6 to 8 of us hanging out in the backyard on a weeknight or whatever. But we used to go there. We used to go race at Larry's place, and we'd spend from 7 to like 10, 11 o'clock at night out there playing with these RC cars. And you would leave Larry's place. I believe this was a year after, but you would leave Larry's place, and there would be a half an inch of dust on your truck, like your vehicle, your street car, whatever you drove to. I swear to God, I've never been to an RC track where when you left, it literally looked like you'd been at Penn Speedway or 5 Mile, any of these local tracks around here. I mean, an inch of dust, half inch of dust, depending on how late we stayed. I mean, we were covered. We were definitely covered at Larry's, but like I said, not knocking it.
That's good for the motors.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was a really tight, really neat racetrack because the groove around the bottom, the infield was only, I believe, it was like 1.5 foot, maybe 2 foot wide, so it was really paper clippy. The straightaways weren't very long, and he had some crazy, crazy steep banking. And it was a pretty loamy track, so it would you'd get that Millbridge type of deal going, where whatever loam got blown up onto the outside, he had a wall all the way around the outside, so it would build like a lip, yeah. And it would pack in. So I mean, you could run almost right rear. I mean, it was fun. Coolest thing ever, watching RC cars run around a racetrack, scraping their right rear quarter panel off the wall, like side by side. You're on the bottom of the racetrack, barely touching the throttle, or you could be on the outside, just hammer down full throttle, right rear quarter panel, scraping against the wall. It was a gnarly racetrack, elbows up type of place to run.
Yeah, I never got to see it. That was before I was involved in RC racing. But Mike, I was spending quite a bit of time with Mike. I had a race truck. Me and Mike both had. I think we both.
You guys go back a ways.
Yeah, we go back over to Pete Christensen's house in his garage, and some late night festivities working on race trucks and stuff like that. And that was how this is an idea that I had. Like, I want to try this. And he told me, so we tried it. But I never got to see Larry's track, and it's a shame that Larry's gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a good dude.
It wasn't too far down the road for me right here now, so. Yeah, it is a bit of a shame that Larry had passed, but it was definitely one of those neat places. They tried some fun stuff, some chemical double X, I guess we'll call it.
Formula X.
We did the grape soda thing. Another one that was very big to the RC area in the the RC area world in the southern tier area was Emmanuel French, EJ. Frenchie there, one of the things he used to do was Ajax, the powdered Ajax.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
He'd spread out the Ajax on the track. That and his grape soda was his big secrets being passed down to me when I was playing
to the world.
Yeah. So hopefully I'm not blowing his spot up there. But, that was definitely one of those things that silly, you would have never thought it would have worked type of deals that surprised the heck out of you. You got anything else on the silly track preps? How about something that you thought was going to work for sure that just totally failed?
Water.
Well, it made too much of us.
I haven't. I mean, I've had some ideas before, and a lot of them I just haven't had the stones to try. But I've got some. That. Joe from Turkey tries genius on track prep. Russell Dyer from Dyer Vision. There's another fun channel. You always better buckle up. You want to watch those guys. But yeah, he's Joe from Turkey Trot. Everything I've heard is he's got it down. He's got but there's some articles I can't. It's not letting me scroll the conversation here to see somebody had said something. Where the hell did my live video go? But yeah, so it's just basically there's a lot of ways to get there. It's just a matter of it's really easy to get it wrong, but it's really hard to get it right. And we can find somebody that any of these tracks, if they get 4 out of 5 nights right, or even 3 out of 5 nights right, they're doing a good job.
I got a Greg Walsh commenting in.
That's the one I was looking. That's the comment I was looking for.
Greg says there's a track in Michigan that used to use beet juice and molasses for dust control and grip. Now, another job that I had over the years is I used to work at a tire shop, and we used to do the tractor tires, the filling, like the calcium filled tires. The beet juice is it's a calcium replacement, basically. So instead of filling your tractor tires with this calcium, you'd fill it with this so-called beet juice. And boy, is he right about it being sticky. Is that stuff you did not want to get? Is
that the nasty, stinky stuff that was in that tote that I got from you?
Correct.
Oh.
Correct. That stuff, boy, did it stink. It stunk to high heaven. Oh, my Lord. But it was sticky, too. And that was interesting that he says that, because I was curious. I always that was one of those things in my head that
is it cheap?
When I worked. No, it's not cheap. I know of a place by Norwich, just before Norwich, that you can get it though.
Okay.
I got the hookup if you ever,
maybe
ever interested.
Maybe I'd be willing to give it a try. I mean, I'll try anything once.
Well, I'm not sure how it would smell. That would be my only concern, is how it would smell.
Right.
It definitely is not one of those organic smelling, materials. It doesn't smell like a racetrack or dirt or anything.
Yeah.
I've heard it tastes sweet. I
don't
have much.
So why do they call it beet juice?
I've had some spray in my mouth, but it doesn't taste anything like beets. No. It doesn't taste great at all.
No, I wonder if
it tastes a little bit like molasses.
I know. I wonder if he was talking about beet juice as in squeeze the beet, the juice you got, or that crap that you're talking about.
Oh no, definitely he's talking about the beet juice for sure. Beet juice and molasses. That's I can't think of what they actually call it. If you talk a little bit, I might think about it. But the beet juice is like the not so common name for it. It's the nickname for it. What it's actually.
Is it like a byproduct of something?
To be
A
honest
lot of
with
the
you,
stuff they find is just, it's like, oh, it's waste. It's,
I don't. It might
salt
be a
brine,
byproduct.
you know.
It might be a byproduct of something, but I know it's all natural. It's all organic. It's not toxic whatsoever. So it doesn't have any implications with the EPA or whatever. That's one of the things why the farmers that we were doing were wanting to switch over, is because if it leaked, if they had issues, whatever, it leaked, they didn't have to worry about their livestock or their crops getting damaged by it.
Yeah,
but that's an interesting take there from Greg Walsh about the beet juice. I'd be interested in trying that out. But yeah, that's about what I got on track prep and what my knowledge and extends into prepping a track. So all the promoters out there that haven't gotten it right, or have gotten it right and haven't gotten it right, man,
I'll tell you,
I give you all the props in the world. You guys, you work your butts off.
It's really, and I'll tell you, track prep really can be an addiction. It doesn't matter whether it's a stock car track or a go-kart track or a backyard bicycle track or an RC car track. It's just, it's almost
as addicting as setting a car.
I want to compare it to golf.
Golf? Oh, God.
Okay, I want to compare it to golf because it is so easy to suck. But, man, when you figure out that one thing that works, like, oh, man, you're watching, like, I'm a terrible golfer. But with the right lesson and turn your club just that way. Hold your hand just a little bit different. It's basically the same thing with track prep. It's like, oh, okay. So I finally figured out this track likes to be soaked, absolutely soaked, an hour before race time, and then get rolled in. Or this track likes the big tires, or something like that. And like these, I know Afton. There was actually a lot of praise about Ronnie at Afton getting the track prep down this year. Getting it down so the track was. My understanding, I didn't get there much, was he had a hell of a surface. Now he's gonna go up to Skyline and the track surface, unless he takes the entire surface from Afton up to Skyline, which I haven't heard. I've heard is not out of the realm of possibilities. I've heard it's sitting in a pile right now. But the surface material at Skyline is going to be different than the surface material at Afton, and I'm sure it's going to take a little bit of time to figure out what that likes. And same with Spoonhauers coming over to Afton. From Thunder Mountain, they know what their surface looks like. And it took them a while because they changed their surface this year. They went from the stuff they've been using that was always really, really dusty to some clay. I think they got up north somewhere. Some clay that's a little more in line with like what Fulton, Brewerton they have. And I know it took them a little bit to figure it out, but it sounds like they got it figured out really well up at Thunder Mountain right now. And I'm sure those guys have been doing it for 30. Since 92, something like that.
Yeah,
so 32 seasons or something like that. They've been doing it, and it took them. It did take them a while to figure out what that particular surface liked. It's basically like the gist of this. I hope that everybody that's watching that's been critical of track prep and stuff like that has learned a little bit here. Hopefully it's at least open some eyes. So, okay, maybe it's not as cut and dry as add water, add calcium. That's what, put laundry detergent in it, which laundry detergent has its place too. We've used that before, and it does help get water down into the surface, but it doesn't slow down
it's not a magic trick.
No, it's just in calcium. Like I said, calcium helps, but there's just too many downsides to calcium to be able to use it with any sort of regularity. But yeah, hopefully this has been enough for a lot of these guys that just haven't really been involved. I mean, a lot of racers. I mean, I've been critical of track surfaces before. I've been, it's like, man, why can't they get this right? And well, until you do it yourself, until you realize that what actually goes into it, and it just, and one entire night, 10% difference in humidity in the air can take your track from being a dust bowl to spot on.
Yeah, it's really easy to be a critic when you're not an expert.
Yeah,
and I There's another thing. You don't know another thing that consistency between golf and track prep is consistency. Getting it right.
Yep.
Getting it right is, that tiny little tweak of the wrist or that spray of the water.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to nail it every single week and get it right and get it the same week in and week out. So
and I don't know anybody that can get it that close. I mean, Jeremy Corcoran is one of the, I would say, arguably one of the best track prep guys, and even he misses every now and then. So it's not, and Jimbo's right. It's an art. It's basically you got to feel it. You got to breathe it. You really got to to get it every week. You just nobody's going to be able to do it.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things. I think that like I said, I've done it a little bit, and I've taken a little bit of an addiction to it as well. When I was doing it, to me it was like it's almost as intricate as setting up your race car. It was just about the same type of deal. You've kind of make notes, mental notes, or hey, maybe you have to write them down or whatever. You make notes on what you do and how the weather was, or this, that, and the other thing, and you adjust from there. And like I said, it's a science, it's an art. It's not something that a promoter or a track guy is going to get it. A track maintenance guy is going to get it right every single time. And I think the other thing that hopefully some of the viewers got out of this is that we're battling, or should say track promoters or prep guys are battling many different variables every single week that goes into their decision on what they do on the racetrack and how they prep it. So
yep.
Hopefully you guys took a little bit of attention to it and learned a little bit. Hopefully, by no means am I an expert.
I'm not considered. I don't call myself an expert either. I'm nowhere near it, but I don't know how to get it right every time. But I know how to screw it up every time. So all I can do is learn from the mistakes.
So with that, I want to again thank everybody for watching. I want to thank our sponsors, Iron Ring Studios, Brad Weaver Racing, Champion Cartway. Obviously, this video powered by AG Video, and hope everybody has a good night. Yeah, and if you'd like to get involved, you'd like to sponsor one of these shows, we can do it. We'll get you on here for $20-$25. Shoot us a message. We got a lot of stuff that we want to do. We're planning on, even once we get into the springtime, we're planning on doing some live broadcasts and stuff like that. I know the Riverhawk 100, we're going to try to have a live multi-camera feed for that race. Obviously, we got to upgrade our equipment a little bit. So yeah, if you want to get involved, you want to sponsor a video or become a regular sponsor with us, we can hook you up for real cheap. So thanks for tuning in. Next week, I think our plan is next week we will not be on Tuesday night, being the day after Christmas, but possibly maybe Thursday or Friday. Just keep an eye open for that. I think the following week we're gonna probably take off, so it'll be we'll stretch it out over the next 3 weeks. We'll have one about a week and a half in, and go back to our Tuesday nights after the 8th or something like that. We'll be back on our Tuesday nights. So thanks again. We'll see you probably the end of next week sometime, and that's it. Have a good night, guys. Thanks a lot.